I'd like to focus today on this gospel, especially this part about the master coming back from a wedding. And Jesus says to the disciples, "Be like servants who await their master's return from a wedding, ready to open immediately when he comes and knocks." Ready to open the door immediately when he comes and knocks. And I'd like to focus this homily on this idea of destiny. The idea of destiny, the idea of coincidence in our lives. You ever notice that? Sometimes things happen in our daily lives, or maybe a big thing, and we'll go, wow, God did this. God was involved directly, right? That's a good thing, right? A good thing when God does that? However, sometimes things like this happen. I remember my cousin was telling me this years ago that somebody was sharing with him how they were really concerned because they were having car trouble, and they shared how God sent somebody their way. They went to the store, and this person showed them an easy way to do this, and it only cost $25. And they were praising the Lord for God's meeting their needs in this way. And my cousin said, "Well, I could have done it for $2. Just gone to the store." Now, what about that? Is God directly involved in our lives? Is that something we want, where every moment is charted by the Lord? Not everybody wants God working through coincidence. This is from Julian Barnes, this writer I've discovered recently. And listen to what he says. "I don't care much for coincidences. There's something spooky about them. You sense momentarily what it must be like to live in an ordered, God-run universe with God looking over your shoulder and dropping helpful hints about a cosmic plan." Interesting thought that God can be involved, but sometimes if it doesn't work out, what about then? How do we deal with this? Is God really knocking on the door? And how does God knock on the door? I think that's the answer, is what is God doing and what is our response supposed to be? And so when we think about that passage with regard to God knocking and our opening the door, think about it this way. God knocks. We think that we are the ones that are always doing the knocking. We think that we're the ones that are pursuing God. It says in the Gospels, Jesus says, and we know this very well, "Ask and you shall receive. Seek and you will find." And what's the last one? Knock and the door will be open. But now we find that God is doing the knocking as well. We think we're knocking on heaven's door, and God in heaven, the door of heaven is actually, or God is knocking on our door. And the question is, well, how do we open that door? Look at that passage I asked you to mark, Revelation 3:20. Revelation chapter 3:20, the first science fiction book ever written. Revelation 3:20, it's the bottom of the first column on page 1239. Listen to what Jesus says, verse 20. "Here I am. I stand at the door and knock. If anyone hears my voice and opens the door, I will come in and eat with that person." In other words, have fellowship, and they with me. So what's happening here is twofold. Number one, God is knocking, and number two, God is talking. And have you ever heard somebody talk through the door? How clearly can you, I have, how clearly can you hear a person, "Hello, I'm on the outside, let me in." It's like that. How are you going to hear the person best? You open the door. You might recognize the voice. It's like a bad connection on your phone, but until you open the door, you don't hear them clearly. And that's how it is with you and me. We open the door to God, and the thing is, it's not just, "Oh, maybe God's going to knock on my door today." God is constantly knocking. God is constantly knocking on the door, expecting us to open. And we must open the door if we're going to hear God's voice more clearly and know what we need to do. Then we will see God working in our lives. But the interesting thing is this. It's not so much God is magically moving the dice around or pushing things around and causing all these circumstances to fall just into the right place. It's rather in wherever we find ourselves, we work with God and find God. We find God. God doesn't find us. And if we could step like the Portuguese proverb, God writes straight with crooked lines. That is happening because everything in your life works for the good, although immediately it may not be so great. Let me give you an example. This is what I do on my vacation. Okay, I went down to Southern California and helped my daughter move north. That's a good vacation. So 2 weeks ago, we called a budget place or whatever it was, and we ordered a truck. And so everything was set up. We got a truck, got a hand truck, got a trailer to pull a car. So we were set to go. We had to get a humongous truck in order to qualify to pull a car. And so we get all this set up. And we're going to fill about 25% of the truck. The rest of it's just to pull the car. I thought about just driving the car into the truck, but we've got this going. And then the day before I'm down there, they call and say, oh, by the way, you didn't give us enough notice, and we don't have a trailer for you. But there's a place 15 minutes from us that can rent you one. So pick up the truck, us, and then just 15 minutes further down in Orange County, we'll get that trailer and put it on. Okay, so we get down there and we come, and the first thing that happens is they say, oh, by the way, we don't have the hand truck because the guy who has the key quit and kept the key. But the other guys have one. Go there. Okay. So as he drives this huge truck out, it looks like a C5 class truck. It's enormous. It even has the wings. And as I'm getting in, it says, oh, by the way, the gas cap is gone because somebody stole it. But don't worry, because this happens all the time. And we'd loan you one, except our door is locked because the guy quit and kept the key. Fine. Then I learned that when you live in Southern California, 15 minutes is not 15 minutes up here. It's more like 30 to 45 minutes. So we wanted to get an early start, so we're driving over there. It's early-ish. We get to the place, and we find it, and there's this trailer that looked like it must, the Flintstones must have put it together. It was really, really old and rickety. We back this huge truck up, get it on there finally after much labor, and the guy's helping me hook it up, and guess what? There's no wiring for the brakes. And the guy says, let me make a call. He makes a call. 20 minutes later, he says, okay, here's what it is. Not a problem. The guy will be here in 2 hours to put the wiring in. Not a problem. So then we have to take this old rickety trailer off the back of this huge bus of a truck, and we're jumping up and down on the back of the truck to pop it open off the tow bar. We finally get it off. That's about an hour later. And so we don't have a truck, we don't have a hand truck. Oh, we have a truck, it's not much of one. We don't have a hand truck, we don't have a trailer, and so we have to drive the other car behind it. So we get back to where my daughter Risa lives, and then we are setting everything up and packing and everything. And I finally say, you know what? I'm going to call the guy and see if I can get a discount, because for one thing, I'm going to be driving an empty truck. It's so big, there's hardly anything in it. And we paid for a truck, a hand truck, a trailer, and all this. And so I call the guy, and he says, not a problem. I'll call the office and see what we can do for you. I will call you right back. So he calls me back, and he says, well, here's how it is. We're going to lower the price down to the next lower truck, so you're going to save $11. Yes. That's a Frappuccino Fruitini at Starbucks. So anyways, after all this, our early start, we are leaving at 4 o'clock in Southern California. Do you know what happens at 4 o'clock in Southern California, right? Okay, so here we are driving through LA traffic in 5 o'clock traffic, which starts about 3 o'clock. In the middle of this, going very, very slow with this huge truck, 2 cars going through there, and the traffic really didn't let up all the way up till we got to the 12, Highway 12, which is just outside of Fairfield. I have never seen this before. It was all these trucks, and people chasing us and so forth. So finally, we got there, but here's the point. When I called the guy and I talked to him, and when I dealt with the people, it was just like God was speaking to me in this word, and this is how it happens. God said, open the door. Open the door to me, not to the circumstances. You can't change the circumstances. It will be what it will be. I'm not clever enough to change my circumstances, but I can open the door to God and choose to respond in love to the people with whom I dealt. I won't even tell you about what happened after I dropped the truck off, but it involved a dump truck, or actually a garbage dump, and it involved somebody telling me, you better call corporate or else you're not going to get anything done because I'm not going to help you. I'm not going to tell you I said that, but that's what happened. So anyways, but the choice was mine. Do I open the door to God or do I have a miserable day? I chose to respond to God because God said, love everybody, love your neighbor, do good to all, and find God not when things are going well, but find God in whatever circumstances in which you are dealing. That's the mystery of God. That's the presence of God. And this was what happens when you and I choose to open the door to God. Whether it's in our memories, the bad things that happen, and forgiving people, whether it's in the anxieties that we have to deal with daily, whether it's our work experience, our family experience, if I choose to open the door and respond to what God's Word tells me, it's a beautiful day. Everything is ordered. God takes everything and puts it in order according to His Word. God enables me to interact and have a relationship with other people rather than treating people as its. I can treat people as persons. I learn to know myself better because I'm reflecting God's love more and more. And finally, whom do I meet when I open the door? I meet God daily in every circumstance because God really does write straight with crooked lines. It was God all along. Now here's the point. You have a choice. Every moment God is knocking, will you open the door? If you and I will open the door, do you know what we have? We have heaven. We have an experience with God. We aren't overwhelmed by the world because we say God's will be done. Regardless of the circumstances and the outcome, I will find God here. I will find love. The other choice isn't so great. If I choose to just keep the door shut because I'm not in control, if I choose to have things my way and not God's way, if I am constantly having my hand out and fighting people rather than loving them, you know what happens? I'm spinning my wheels and I'm miserable. C.S. Lewis put it very well. He said, the gates of hell are locked from the inside. Let's open that door.